navigate across disparate systems. So much of what we were talking about in our prep sessions was, well, if you don't get it right from the beginning, all the analytics you try to do is on, messy or disparate or wrong data. So Mike, we thought you'd kick it off a little bit, just talk about the product setup and the data and all the things you go through, and then we're going to ask for Dave to talk about the other side of that, right? What do you do with all the data, and how do you manage it and deal with the complexity?
Yeah, I mean, it is complex, but at its core, there's consistencies across. I mean, I think people are amazed when you talk about sub-accounting, and in our sub-accounting platform, over 600 plus asset managers. You kind of look at that and say, there's 600 plus asset managers. It's amazing. And when we talk setup, we're obviously, it starts with the operational controls around that, understanding the systems, how they interact, understanding the asset managers' structure. There's a lot that goes into that, from looking at their dealer guides to prospectuses to mutual fund profile, questions, questionnaires, meetings, and so on and so forth. And over time, as we've worked with different clients and asset managers, we've gained a set of knowledge, and we have information that we can leverage. So that there's a ton that goes into that setup, a ton of review. It's also the tools you utilize to facilitate that. As we talked about, are they structured correctly for what you're trying to achieve, end result? How do you use those tools? From our perspective, looking at next generation, being able to take that data and compare it, being able to look at profile and TA data and sub-TA data, and be able to demonstrate, is that data consistent, accurate? If there are discrepancies, why are there discrepancies? Are they intentional? So that, to me, that's where we're going. That's the next generation. And then at the same time, it's understanding and where we're trying to bridge the gap with our asset manager and distribution for our clients is to discuss sharing of that data, the appropriate way to share that, the access to things such as the DSP, DSA files, the FICAs, and how do you communicate those and share those, and how do you make sure only the intended audience sees that information. So that's certainly critical in any process, whether that's operational or involving software, that there's the controls around that, and sharing that data, knowing who you're sharing the data with and who has it.
So Renee, you guys may know a little bit about Wheelhouse. We do a lot of work with clients on disparate data, so we know what you go through. When it comes to all that data Mike just talked about, some of which is in a document form and a lot of it is coming to you in files, I mean, how has American Funds approached just the pure data management, and how you get smart about what to use and what to ignore?
So I'm sure, just like everybody else, you have a lot of disparate systems with information. That's what we have at American Funds as well. We have systems that house our payment information. We have systems that house our transparency information. And then we have a record-keeping system as well. So there's data all over the place. We use tools to help us aggregate that information and then dashboard it out to us. When we get rid of the noise, we think about what's important for us. Where do we want a micro look, or where do we want a macro look? So we have created some exception reporting to provide us with that level of detail. We have some daily reporting that we're able to then send back to the firm so that they can correct whatever issues they have. And then we have some periodic reporting as well. I mean, the boards of directors, you guys know this, but the boards of directors are required to make sure these investors are secured. And at American Funds, we believe that having a good monitoring process is very important. And I would say from a FICA standpoint, I'm taking a little bit step outside, because I hear a lot of folks say, well, we've got the FICA now, so we're good. But you have to realize that FICA is an audited report around some compliance rules, but it may not be exact for your shop, because you have your own policies in place. And then when an auditor comes in and looks at controls, they are not looking down at that level. So it's a great tool for the toolbox, but it's not the only tool in the toolbox. And when we think about security, I'm sure many of you were asked, like American Funds was asked, to no longer require PII for certain firms. Well, we thought about that because we'd always had it, and we thought it was a great idea to have that information, but as we saw all these breaches, we said, man, does it really make sense for us to have this level of information, I mean, shareholder registration information? Do we really need that to be able to do level of monitoring that we want to. So for those couple of firms that required that, we rushed to make that happen. You know, we did our due diligence, but we found that was the right thing to do. And then we decided as a company that we needed to continue that effort. And so we reached out to the rest of our omnibus firms, and we're working through the same thing of no longer requiring that level of information. So the information that will remain within our warehouses or within our CRM systems, our information that follows security policy, but we've taken the stand to no longer require PII information. And then I think you asked me about organization, you asked about, well, how do I get rid of the noise? Well, really, there is a lot of noise, but you have to, as a group, think about what's important. What do you want to monitor? What helps the board get comfortable? And once you decide on those things, then you build the tool to help you gather information on those key points.
So you've done some, I think, interesting things too around the gathering of information, right? So what tools do you use to just make sure that the activities around gathering the information, getting feedback from your partners, how do you keep track of that information?
Well, on a daily basis, our systems pull reports for us, so when there are exceptions to our processes, they come up in a report, and that information is housed in a CRM system. So we create what we call SR, so they're like incident reports, and we just track that off of that. So we can input something, we can trend it, we can see what's happening with the firm, we can see what's happening across firms in that same area.
So to that point, I think the most efficient large programs that we see clearly separate the operational execution layer from the reporting layer. So if you look at we talked about the functional tenets of an oversight program. If you look at the operational tenets, you have trade analytics, which includes trade rule compliance and 22C2 rules. You have fee management, which is essentially an ultra complex payable system. And then you have transparency data analytics, which is blue sky or does my TA match my sub TA or variance, that kind of transparency analytics. Those things run every day of the week. And then several key metrics come out of that layer into your oversight program. And to get to the scale that will actually be effective at finding risk with a small team, they only need to be looking at something that a whole team underneath them said, this is what concerns us. Out of the 30 invoices we processed yesterday, these 3 accounts and these 2 invoices, this is what's not right. You can't look at everything. You'll never get to scale. You have to let the data tell you where to go.
Yeah, that's really important. We do have different teams that do that level of monitoring. We have a team in the payments area that does payment validation whenever we invoice. We have a team that looks at our frequent trading processes, and then we have a compliance team that does the overall monitoring and assessment of a firm. But you are definitely correct there that that information has to be pulled and to us aggregated to give us a good profile of the firm. And so we're still working through that level of granularity of having real specific firm profiles, because that takes some time, getting information from all these systems and really finding out what's important within those systems. We're not quite there yet. We're starting to get to that level, but we're making good progress.
Mike, is what Renee's saying, you resonate with what you're hearing from your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of clients have similar challenges where there are disparate systems. There's multiple constituents in the organization that are working on the function. And to Whitfield's point, to obtain that scale and to use your resources, the limited resources efficiently, we feel it's really about getting that data in one location and being able to utilize it to risk rank your distribution partners, be able to run analytics against the data and eliminate some of that noise. And really, how much of it can you make science versus an art, right? We want to build as much science into it as possible in that 80-20 rule. So 80% of that and get to that 20% of that art of looking at it and doing that review. So definitely that's a constant theme, disparate systems, multiple people involved, and how do you bring that together so that you can leverage the data and really what it comes down to is knowing when to review what correct distribution partners to review at what correct time and being efficient at that.
So I think one of the keys, maybe one of the things to take home is the linkage to CRM. So I helped our compliance folks at Blackstone develop the oversight strategy, and one of the biggest cost of doing the oversight is literally tracking what people are doing. They don't have a CRM system, so they have somebody who goes through all the emails from 4 different departments and enters stuff into an Excel spreadsheet and then provides the board with, well, here are all the oversight activities that we've done over the last 3 months. And it just takes hours and hours and hours of really smart people's time. So I think that, making sure you get the activities in the same data set would make their lives a lot easier to simply say, and here's the activities with Merrill Lynch, right? And to that end, I would imagine now you have really great data about, well, who haven't we talked to enough? Who haven't we talked to recently, which can also help you make sure that nobody falls through the cracks, right?
That is true. A lot of us focus on those strategic large firms. That's where the oversight focus is then. Based on the size of your group to be able to monitor. At American Funds, we took the stance of attempting to look at the population and a percentage of the population every year across the channels that we have. And so some of that work isn't as detailed and it's just data driven or monitoring from websites and sanctions. So the smaller firms, we're able to look at asset changes, period over period. We're able to see very quickly if they are having some exceptions to our policy, and that's not anybody doing that manually. So that's really, really helpful when a lot of folks are spending their time in the larger space. But you're getting questions from the board, what about everybody else?
You make a great point, because it's not always the largest distribution partners, and it's having that data in one place to trend it and understand where things are moving. We just finished with the discussion prior. And it doesn't take a big distribution part, right? Reputation is so important, as they talked about, and it can be a smaller distribution partner if something happens, and that can have a ripple effect in a reputational scenario. So it's very important that you understand a lot of the big, and I know Whitfield mentions this a lot of the bigger firms probably have more robust controls, more resources, more data dedicated to their processes, better service providers potentially that they're working with, and so it's really finding those risks. So.
Renee brought up that building out the profile and kind of the core counterparty management. Building out a profile about your firm goes a long way in doing data analytics down the road. We're seeing our clients start to track stuff that is not exactly in their data, and that is keeping track of the overall AUM at their counterparties, not just their AUM. Because if you're trying to find risk in execution of your fund policies, if Regions Bank goes out and buys SunTrust and Midwest this year, likely that's probably where something's going to pop up, not at Vanguard, who doesn't have anything big operationally on their horizon right now. Let's look at where risk is probably going to pop up, and using year-on-year growth of your counterparty is probably more likely than just the straight AUM that somebody's running, because everybody in this room works for big companies. Y'all know you're built to scale, so we're trying to find attributes about the counterparties that will help us say, instead of doing another full-blown review on a SIFI, why don't you look here in the middle tier? Somebody's got $500 million with you, but the reality is this company XYZ came out of nothing. It's a merger of 4 companies over the last 2 years. We have no idea whose ops team survived or if they're even good at it, because they weren't on our radar 2 years ago. So that's what hopefully a good structure of data about your counterparty can help you down the road understand why they are or are not good at supporting your fund policies.
So we started down the analytics path a little bit. Before we do that, this is the point where we check to see who's still awake. It's close back there. What are your questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for Renee. Your PII data and eliminating that from coming into your system? Was that a big task? Was that relatively easy?